Alright guys, welcome back to another video class. And today we will be trying to make some furniture. Yeah, so for the first time we're actually going to do something that is a real object and not just playing around with little things. I found an interesting series of furniture on Pinterest. Not the best source, but it's still fine. And if we zoom in here, it's this star coffee table, one of these two kind of chairs or stools, this interesting side table, this chair, this other side table, and this bench. So we will go one by one. I already have them here, more or less, as a reference in 3D, but we will be doing them together um, using the commands that we already know and maybe a few new ones. So you can do it two ways. You can either try it out yourself now. You can download the file also from the links in the description so you can see. And we are not going to be worrying about dimensions. It's mostly about learning how to get the general shape and size correct. But if it's in meters, centimeters, it doesn't really matter. So you can either try to do them all at once or maybe do the first one and then come back and then we can try to do it together. So see you in a little bit. All right. So let's start with the first one. And I have now the viewports all focused on the same space, but let's jump into the perspective so we can see what we are doing in 3D. And let's analyze here. So we have this really cool side table in the shape of a little star, and I have it here also. Which is very simple. There's the thing that you will learn with Rhino is that you can do the same thing in many different ways. And this is a prime example of a simple object that can be done in many, many, many ways. So, for example, you could start with a polyline and kind of draw out the shape of the star by hand. It looks not so nice. What you can also do is go here to the polygon and find this little triangle on the side, or click and hold, and find the polygon star. Then find an interesting size. There we go. I like that. To me this looks a bit off center, or one of them is a bit longer than the other ones, like this. Yeah. And then, of course, we need to give it a shape. So we can either, with the gumball, just drag this icon with the circle, the extrude circle up, and well, we have it. Amazing. Or we can also select our object and then do the command extrude CRV, which will give us kind of a similar result. Again, with every command that we do, we have multiple options, and I had now solid selected. If it was not selected, it would be the outline in 3D of this shape, but not solid. And you can do that by doing the command cap, and that closes the object for us. So here, our first challenge is completed. We have our interesting star coffee table. Let's go to the next one. Here, I chose a mix of the two, so I have the legs of this round one and the seat of the square one. And it's these truncated cones stacked on top of each other with this metal seat. So again, many ways to do, but you can try to go ahead with a truncated cone here. So again, to find these other options, you can hover your mouse to this little triangle and select the truncated cone. So for the truncated cone, we click and start doing our base. Then we choose our height, and then we need to choose the radius of the top. However, I have grid snap on, which is locking me to these intervals. So I'm going to turn it off, which means I have a little bit more precision. And then I click, and I have confirmed my little cone. Next, what can we do? Well, I think the best would be now to look at the top view and think about where this seat cover is going to be. So let's just take a triangle. Let's turn back grid snap. So we are around here. And let's drag until we find a kind of happy rectangle shape of where our seat is going to be. And then we can basically copy this same element a bunch of times to recreate this stepped leg. You can do so by using a copy command. This is a new command, by the way. So copy, it's the same as move, but you are not moving the original object. Instead, you are copying it. And when you're happy, press enter to confirm. So now we have 4 objects that are the same, just in a square array. We could do the same with copying now from the center point to here, like so. Copy. We find the center, and then we find the center of this shape here again. But what we can also do is selecting all of them by holding Shift and click, and then holding the Alt key or Option key in Max, and then dragging the gumball. It will again make a copy, which is very handy sometimes to just quickly copy something around. Again, you select your objects, hold Alt key or Option key, and drag the move handle of the gumball. All right, so we have the legs done. The next step would be to turn this into this square seat. How would we do that? Well, we could, again, extrude curve with the rectangle selected. Let's do 1, enter, and cap. Yeah, that's looking quite all right. But it has that little lip at the back. So we could maybe differently come here with the box command and drag from this corner to, you see, I don't like center. So let's turn off center, snap. Here we go. Now we are snapping here, and then we can make this backside. Lovely. So already the second furniture is completed. Next, we have this interesting side table. This object is just composed of 2 different shapes, which is the sphere and this truncated pyramid. So how should we do that? We can, for example, begin with the spheres. So let's go here to the box and find the sphere command and make a little sphere. Again, I'm looking from the top view because it's easier to see where my spheres are located. If I look here, well, I find it easier in the top view. Also, you would see that here on the front view, my spheres are a little bit below everything else. So we can put them up. Great. And next would be this truncated pyramid shape. So again, luckily that exists for us. It's this little icon here. So the truncated pyramid is located again inside the solid menu. Here you go. And then it will start from the center. If I'm looking at my command, it will ask the center of my pyramid. However, yeah, it's off center of my current object. But you see that we started in the top view. We can maybe try to do it in the perspective view. Yes, this seems to be okay. And something like this. Awesome. But my spheres are not in the right place. So again, because I have grid snap on, it's not really helping me. So let's turn it off and then move it to the correct place. There you go. Let's turn grid snap back on and move this up. And again, I'm going to hold Alt or Option with my left hand and right click with my mouse button. And just like that, we have another one. Of course, I think the proportions of the other one I did a little bit better, but again, this is more about learning how to do this instead of doing something perfectly. Let's go to the next one. This is one of my favorites. So it's the chair with these 2 spheres happening here. Let's begin with one of these spheres. So again, sphere, let's do it here. Yeah, perfect. And then the next thing we can do is start with a little box. But this is now going inside of my sphere, which is not the idea. If I look at my reference image, it is standing on top of it. So we can move it up. And here we go. However, I need to think about how tall my other legs are going to be. So I know that my box now is 2 units wide. So let's do it again and bring it up. I'm now doing it just by feeling. However, I think this is too big and this is too small. So we learned in the last class how to use scale 1D. So we can select one of our objects here, press enter, pick the base point, which is where the shape is going to grow or shrink. So I'm going to pick the bottom shape and drag my mouse all the way to the top. And again, it has to be a straight line. If I pick a wrong or a different angle, it will create stuff like this, which we don't want right now. So scale 1D, pick the bottom, straight line up, and then drag it down just a little bit. And we do the same with this. We want to grow from here, straight line up, and line it perfectly. Amazing. Next is just copying this to the side to have the matching spots. And we can even go ahead and copy this sphere, which is the exact same for the other spots there it's going to be. And I'll just leave it there for now. So we have our legs with the interesting detail. We need to now make the seat. Again, we can simply make a box, give it some depth. Let's move our sphere down. And here, we can even make it more interesting. Let's delete this sphere and copy this whole thing instead. So we go like this. Awesome. Paste it in place. Do the same on the other side. And again, with our handy box, do something like this. Amazing. This one is a bit more delicate. This one is a bit more chunky, but as long as we get the shape correct, for now, it is all right. Next, we have this flower table. So I have here an example, and I tried to make it a bit more organic using the interpolated curves, which you can find right here. And the important thing we need to know is there is a kind of a pentagon because there's 5 little points here. So we could even, using the polygon, create a pentagon for us as a reference. Go back to our interpolated curves and start drawing the shape. Yeah, this is going quite okay. And again, if you make a mistake or something that you don't like, you can always Control Z or Command Z to go back to the previous state. Here, it's gonna give me some issues because one line is going into another line, and that doesn't really work with 3D objects. So just be sure that when you are drawing your flower, there is enough space for the petals to not intersect each other. Yeah. Okay. Again, it's a little wonky, but it's fine. The next detail I see here is that the legs have this straight line carved out of the petal. And if you remember, we tried once to use the trim command. I'm gonna switch back to the top view. Using just a polyline, I'm going to drag some lines across some petals here, like so. So let's start with the trim. Type trim, we want to select the cutting objects because I want to cut pieces out of both the flower and these lines. I have to select everything, press enter, and then I can go with my mouse and click, 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 do it again and again to get my interesting table shape. The funny thing is, when I click on my object, these lines are all separated. because with the trim, they were different objects and they're not joined together. So we can simply select the whole, all the curves and do a join command, which fixes this issue. Let's go back into perspective. So we have our shape and we can drag it up with the gumball to create this extrusion. However, because I had grid snap on, it is making it always chunky. So if we want to be more delicate, we can turn grid snap off, select our object, and then drag it less to create a more delicate or thin result. Next, we can turn on grid snap again to make sure that we are going in steps. Perfect. And we need to now create the legs. So with the legs, we could again draw a line here that is the same length as my previous line, and extrude curve and drag it all the way down. Quite okay. You can also, by holding Control Shift or Command Shift with these two fingers on your left hand, you can select only one part of your curve or object. So we could select only this little piece. Instead of having to duplicate that curve, we can do an extrude curve directly from here. And we can do the same from here. Amazing. And the last thing we need to do is give these guys a thickness. So how will we do that? Because these are already surfaces, and because they are flipped, the gumball will create this extrusion in a funny angle. So this is another new command. We learned also a few days ago how to use offset, which gives us this result. Let's do smaller. It creates a line offset from the original line. Well, we can do the same with surfaces. It's called offset SRF from offset surface, where we can select the objects that we want to offset, press enter, and you will see that it will give me this interesting interface, which has these lines pointing to where that offset will happen. So in this case, if I look at my original reference here, it's going to the inside of the table. So this one is correct, but these we can just click on the arrows and it will flip it to the inside. And we did a 0.3-ish extrude on the table, so we can also change the distance to 0.3 here and press enter, which will give us this nice result. However, you see that we are having this intersecting line here, which kind of breaks the illusion that this is one piece. So we can go back to our friends Boolean union in this case, select all of our pieces and press enter. That will solve that little issue, and we have a wonderful flower table. Great. We are reaching our last object right now, which is this very cool arch bench. This has a lot of pieces, so how could we do this the easiest? Well, we could try to draw the side profile first and then extrude it from there. Maybe that will be the easiest. So let's just have a general idea of the proportions here. Let's not think about sizes, but we have these interior arches and we have this long piece on the outside of the bench. So we can try in the beginning to use one of these arch commands. So again, or arc actually. So ARC, arc, center of my arc, and pick the outside, and we create one arch. Next, we can draw the lines below. So something like this and like this. So we have now our base arc shape in the bottom. We have to, of course, join these shapes. And we can, using the copy command we learned today, make a bunch of copies of these arcs next to each other. Amazing. So our base underneath shape is correct. And the next thing we can do is create the outside shape. So perhaps here it would be interesting to select these two shapes by holding Control Shift or Command Shift, and we can try to do a regular offset. I think 1 is too much, so let's try 0.5. That sounds okay. That looks okay as well. However, it is going inside of my shape here, but we'll fix that in a second. We of course need this on the other side as well. We could basically hold Alt or Option, use the gumball to drag it around. That's one way. Or we can also learn a new command called mirror, which will copy objects in a mirror way. And what does that mean? Well, let's select our object first, press enter. Then we need to select the start of our mirror plane, which here this shape is symmetrical, so I can pick the exact center. And you can see that if I drag my mouse, it will start mirroring my object against that center point. So I can find the correct space and press click my mouse to confirm or press enter. So now we have an almost done shape. The only thing that is going wrong is these two pieces that are going inside of my arcs. We can just drag a line from here to here to create this top surface. And to finalize, we can do a trim command. Let's select our cutting objects, which I want just this line. Press enter, and then I can click these two extra pieces away. Amazing. Let's join the top surface together. And now let's select this whole outline and flip it. Again, if ortho is not on, it will let you choose any angle. If you turn ortho on, you can do 90 degrees. Or by holding shift, you can turn it on or off temporarily. Great. Let's bring it up so it matches the floor level of everything else, like so. And we can, using the gumball, extrude handle, drag it to give it a thickness. But again, this is an infinitely thin surface now, so we can use the newly learned offset surface to give it a little bit of thickness again. Let's do in the distance 0.2 this time. Again, if you're doing it in a different proportion, maybe you have to play around with the values yourself, but you can always go back with the Command Z or Control Z if you don't like the results. But I thought that the 0.2 looked quite alright. And we can do the same by starting the command and selecting all of my inner arcs together. And I can see that the direction of the offset is correct. Again, it could be that they were wrong, so you just have to click on the arrows to tell them to go to the inside. And press enter, and Rhino does its magic. Fantastic! I think this looks great. They all look very similar to their original shapes. And now you know how to make some furniture. You can go ahead, open Pinterest yourself, and find interesting shapes that you want to recreate. Super good job so far. I'm very proud if you were able to follow everything by yourself. And if you couldn't figure out something, just go maybe to one of the previous videos, or leave a comment, or reach out to me by email, and I will help you out. So again, thank you guys. I see you in the next class. See ya!